June 6, 1944. Dawn breaks over the coast of Normandy, France. The sky is gray, the water cold and violent. Inside, thousands of small wooden boats, young American soldiers grip their rifles with shaking hands. They can hear it already: the thunder of German machine guns, the whistle of mortar shells, the screams of men they've never met but will die beside. At exactly 6:30 in the morning, the front ramp of their boat drops open. Bullets slice through the air, salt water mixes with blood. But something miraculous happens. Within 10 minutes, over 30,000 men have stormed the beaches. Not hundreds, not thousands, tens of thousands. All because of one simple invention: a flat-bottomed plywood boat that the U.S. Navy almost rejected. This boat didn't come from a prestigious military laboratory. It wasn't designed by admirals or Ivy League engineers. It was built by a loud, stubborn boatmaker from the swamps of Louisiana who smoked cheap cigars and had a reputation for being impossible to work with. His name was Andrew Jackson Higgins. And according to General Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, Andrew Higgins was the man who won the war. So how did a wooden box built in a New Orleans boatyard become the most important weapon of World War II? The answer begins not on the beaches of Normandy, but 6 years earlier, in a smoke-filled room at Marine Corps headquarters in Washington, D.C. The year is 1938, and the United States military has a problem that's keeping generals awake at night. War is coming. Everyone knows it. And when it arrives, American forces will need to do something they've never successfully done before: land thousands of troops on hostile enemy beaches, quickly and under heavy fire. Every boat the Navy has tested has failed miserably. Traditional landing boats have deep hulls designed for open water. They can't get close to shore without hitting sandbars or underwater obstacles. Soldiers are forced to jump into water over their heads while carrying 60 pounds of equipment. Many drown before their boots ever touch sand. Those who survive the water become easy targets, climbing slowly over the sides of the boat while enemy machine guns cut them down. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic Ocean, Adolf Hitler is constructing the most ambitious defensive system in human history: the Atlantic Wall. Stretching over 2,000 miles from Norway to the Spanish border, this fortress of concrete bunkers, artillery positions, mines, and barbed wire is designed to make any Allied invasion of Europe a suicide mission. Hitler himself boasts that his wall is impenetrable. And without a way to land troops rapidly and in massive numbers, he might be right. The Marine Corps tests design after design. All of them fail. They're too slow, too expensive, too fragile, or too complicated. Officers begin to whisper that perhaps an amphibious invasion of Europe is simply impossible. Perhaps the war will have to be won another way. Perhaps Hitler has already won. And then, out of nowhere, a letter arrives at Marine Corps headquarters. It's written on cheap paper in bold, aggressive handwriting. The sender is a boat builder from New Orleans named Andrew Higgins. He's heard about the Navy's problem, and he claims with absolute confidence that he already has the perfect solution. Andrew Jackson Higgins was not a man who fit into polite military society. He was rough, loud, opinionated, and had no patience for bureaucracy. He didn't have an engineering degree from MIT or Annapolis. What he had was something far more valuable: decades of experience building boats for the oil workers and fur trappers who navigated the treacherous swamps and shallow bayous of Louisiana. In those swamps, Higgins faced the same problem the Marines were struggling with. How do you move quickly through shallow, debris-filled water without getting stuck? How do you approach a muddy shoreline, unload your cargo, and get out fast? Higgins had solved this problem years earlier with a revolutionary design he called the Eureka boat. It had a flat bottom that let it glide over sandbars and fallen logs. Its propeller was protected inside a semi-tunnel, so it wouldn't get tangled or damaged. And it was built from lightweight plywood, which made it cheap to produce and easy to repair. But most importantly, it was fast, maneuverable, and could operate in water just 3 feet deep. When Marine Corps officers finally agreed to test Higgins' design in 1940, they expected to be disappointed yet again. They'd seen dozens of failed prototypes. Why would this loud Southerner succeed where Navy engineers had failed? But Andrew Higgins wasn't interested in impressing anyone. He was interested in proving them wrong. During the demonstration, his boat roared across the water, drove straight up onto the beach, and then reversed back into deep water without hesitation. It did this again and again, flawlessly. The Navy observers were stunned. One officer grudgingly admitted that the design was impressive but pointed out a critical flaw. Soldiers still had to climb over the sides of the boat, exposing themselves to enemy fire. Higgins didn't argue. He simply asked, "What if I put a ramp on the front?" The officer blinked. "Can you do that?" Higgins grinned. "Give me a month." He had recently seen photographs of a Japanese landing craft with a bow ramp. Higgins didn't waste time reinventing the wheel. He borrowed the idea, improved it, and integrated it into his design. Within weeks, he had a working prototype. The front of the boat now featured a hinged steel ramp that could drop open the instant the boat hit the beach. Soldiers could pour out in seconds, fully protected until the last possible moment. The Marine Corps gave it an official designation: Landing Craft, Vehicle, Personnel, the LCVP, but everyone who used it called it by a simpler name, the Higgins Boat. Now the military faced a new problem. It was 1942 and America had entered World War II. Generals were planning the largest amphibious invasions in human history. They needed thousands of these boats, tens of thousands, and they needed them immediately. The Navy's industrial experts estimated it would take years to scale up production. Higgins looked them in the eye and said, "Give me the contract. I'll have them ready." What happened next was nothing short of extraordinary. Higgins transformed his small boatyard in New Orleans into one of the most efficient war production facilities in the world. His factory operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Assembly lines stretched across multiple city blocks. He hired everyone the rest of American industry refused to hire: women, African Americans, disabled workers, people who had never built anything in their lives. He paid them fair wages and treated them with respect, something almost unheard of in the 1940s. And he redesigned the manufacturing process so that even inexperienced workers could assemble a Higgins boat in just a few weeks. By 1943, Higgins Industries was producing over 700 boats every single month. By the end of the war, his factories had built more than 20,000 landing craft, over 90% of all the boats used by the Allied forces. But Higgins didn't just build boats for Americans. He built them for the British, the Canadians, and even the Soviet Union. His boats became the backbone of every major Allied amphibious operation. They carried soldiers, jeeps, tanks, medical supplies, ammunition, and food. Anywhere the Allies needed to go, the Higgins boat took them there. And then came the ultimate test. June 6, 1944, D-Day. Operation Overlord. The invasion of Nazi-occupied France. Over 150,000 Allied troops prepared to assault the beaches of Normandy in the largest amphibious invasion in history. Leading the charge were thousands of Higgins boats. As dawn broke, they roared toward the shore through a storm of bullets and explosions. The front ramps dropped. Soldiers sprinted onto the sand. Some fell. Many died, but the boats kept coming. Wave after wave. Relentless. Unstoppable. In just one day, Higgins boats delivered over 130,000 troops and 2,000 vehicles onto the beaches of Normandy. Without the Higgins boat, D-Day would have been impossible. And without D-Day, the entire course of World War II might have been different. The same boats that stormed Normandy also led invasions in Sicily, the Pacific Islands, the Philippines, and across the Rhine River into the heart of Germany. Wherever freedom needed to land, the Higgins boat carried it ashore. After the war, General Eisenhower wrote that if Higgins had not designed those landing craft, the Allies never could have landed on an open beach, and the entire strategy of the war would have had to change. Adolf Hitler himself reportedly called Andrew Higgins the new Noah because his simple wooden boats had unleashed a flood that drowned the Third Reich. But here's the sad irony. After the war ended, demand for landing craft vanished overnight. Higgins Industries struggled to survive and eventually closed. Andrew Higgins, the man who had built an empire and changed the world, died nearly broke in 1952. Most people had already forgotten his name, but his legacy remains. Today, you can visit the National World War II Museum in New Orleans and see a Higgins boat on display, a reminder that wars are not only won by soldiers and generals, but by innovators and outsiders who refuse to accept that something is impossible. Andrew Higgins didn't wait for permission. He didn't follow the rules. He saw a problem, built a solution, and didn't stop until it worked. His plywood boat was simple, cheap, and effective. Everything the military establishment said a weapon shouldn't be. And yet it became the most important piece of equipment in the entire war. Because sometimes the simplest answer is the most revolutionary. Sometimes the underdog changes everything. And sometimes a wooden box built in a swamp becomes the vessel that carries freedom itself to the shores of tyranny.